I think you have to be poised in a certain position to make really lasting kind of commentary art. Like you got to really be in touch with. First, you have to notice what bullshit's going on around you, and then you have to know how to harness it and be able to communicate it. I think anybody could learn to draw exceptionally well, and anybody could learn to sculpt exceptionally well, and make beautiful furniture. And I think anybody could probably do all those things, just like you know any discipline, if you give enough time to it, and you don't have a some kind of roadblock handicap that will. I think anybody can learn to do those things,
Stuff.
which gets labeled art. It's the deeper parts of it that that I'm that I need. Like I've gotten good at the skill. It's communicating the because I really don't. I know a lot of artists, but I don't seek out artists. Like I can't look at something and see it just as something. Like I have to see depth into it, and I have to see things in it, or history in it, or attach some weird story to it that I have no idea if it's even true, but maybe this is why that's the way it is. And so
More to it than appearances.
yeah, so my head works like on hyperdrive everywhere visually, like super hyperdrive. So when I see things, there's always got to be some poetry to it, or some romance, or something, because, and I think it just goes back to that growing up. I just had to make imaginary something cool out of something, or pretty out of something that just wasn't. I'm really, really kind of profoundly moved by the physics of buoyancy, and being tethered, and being able to float, and being able to die in a second, like out of breath. I just, the whole thing of this is very fascinating to me in a outward life depth kind of way.
That is weird.
Yeah.
And we're in a body of water. We should.
Yeah, it's something very spiritual. All the art that I've done in my life, I have never gotten the satisfaction that I've gotten from writing lately. I didn't write before 6 months ago, and the writing is the one thing now that I found that people just, they get it. They come out the woodwork and they're like, I had a similar life. I really didn't find a creative outlet until I was 18 or so. And
Nope.
before that, I didn't do a lot of drawing or creating or anything in that respect. It wasn't that I wasn't creative, but I was mischievously creative. So my creativity was like surviving and figuring out how to navigate my surroundings and things going on in my life. I had a mom that was, like I had told you, just was a wild kind of anomaly, mental anomaly, undiagnosed, probably 7 different things, and very scared and reserved from doctors, so she would never go to a doctor for anything, so she just went unchecked. And then a lot of death, just, very sick sister. They divorced when I was young, then she remarried a fellow that was very old, World War II old, and he died of cirrhosis of the liver, and that was when I was young. I mean, he started dying when I was 10, and so I just was taking care of him. And then my grandfather came to live with us, and he had emphysema, so he was dying perpetually. And then so she was trying to take care of my sister, who was always dying from juvenile diabetes. With my mom's stepfather dying, sister, and then they all just basically kind of started falling away, and I started collecting boxes of ashes,
And so, and you said you were mischievously creative.
I mean, I just started doing anything I could to make things easier, not just for me, but for us. And so, I started stealing. I started doing a lot of things, taking advantage of whoever I needed to take advantage of to stay alive, I guess.
Right.
I know that sounds very dramatic, but
It
looking
doesn't.
back on it, I mean, it was very dramatic. By the time I was in 10th grade, up until then, I skateboarded, I was clever. So my wordings were clever, and I had fun. I was always a class clown, and I was creative in that respect, but I didn't do really what I would consider art. I just didn't have an outlet. I was pissed off.
Right. So
Pissed
the
off.
normal kind
Yeah.
of.
So I just went out and so once I left that environment, we lost the house, and my mom actually moved away and left me at the house.
And you were.
uh, 10th grade. So I repeated 10th grade. And my second year of 10th grade, I just was living in a house in the country with no power and nobody there, just me. And
How long were you there?
about a year, a little over a year. And then finally, my father, who I hadn't lived with since I was 3, he asked me to come live with him in Atlanta. Well, he was a good man. He just was stoic and quiet. And when I went to see him, that was my reprieve.
Right.
He hated my mother. They hated each other. And so I didn't talk about it. So they had no idea the extent of what was going on. I'd show up and he'd be like, "Well, I'm sending all those child support checks. Why are you wearing raggedy shoes and this and that?" And I'm like, "Well, I like them, whatever, just to keep it calm." I think knowing what was going on was I could deal with. It was the unknown that was scary to me, so I didn't want to bring on more unknown. Yeah, so I went my senior year of high school and I just became the most popular guy in school. Got the best girl.
Like, I'm sure your dad afforded you things that you didn't have in your other
Yeah,
environment.
well, they weren't super rich or anything like that, but I had a warm house and running water and food and all of that. And
Regularly.
And my wife now was my neighbor. She lived across the street from me, and so I just decided I was going to be. I mean, I already had a very carefree, just really don't really give a fuck attitude about things, and so I was kind of, I just decided I was just going to be the cool, slick kid in school, and came in with a bunch of attitude and a bunch of whatever, because I was a very different person. I'll tell you, I like I said, I've always been creative, but when that senior year of high school, that's when I first started drawing and painting and really trying to be kind of the teenage angst artist, because I had a lot of angst, and I was like, I could identify with these people I see in movies that could put it out and live this life of mystery, and so I was like, I'm gonna do that. And I had a dear friend back in Madison in Morgan County that was an exceptional artist, and he just is a true head, could communicate with hand. And so I kind of used him as a model. His name was Matt Lassiter. He was just a regular weirdo, but a cool, smart, never studied, exceptionally just cool, mysterious guy, ugly as hell.
Difference.
He died in a van not too long ago with a needle in his arm. I mean, he's one of those guys that just had everything, but he couldn't escape it. I decided that's what I was going to do and start doing that. And so I did start, and it turned out I could be really good at it. Like, I had a little bit of that. And I don't know that I have anything. I don't know, and I never have really thought that I really had anything special. It's just I unlocked what we all kind of have or something. Like, I found a way to pick the lock, and I was like, oh. And the confidence is a big deal, So confidence.
Is it confidence or lack of fear, or both?
Well, I guess there's kind of a symbiotic thing between the two, and on the boat ride over here when we were saying about how hard times and hard situations can prepare you, for things. It just seems like those things prepared me to not care about. I mean, if you're walking in with a 400-pound mom that's cussing everybody out in sight at your elementary school, you're just not going to care if you express your deepest, darkest things on a piece of paper. I talk very freely about my deepest, darkest things because now I'm kind of like, that's okay.
Like, what do you think it is that gave you that ability to take and make pretty? And
I mean, I will tell you this. I don't know if you read this particular writing about me being arrested. And so when I moved in with my father, I lived with him for 1 year. And up until then, I did no drugs, smoke, drink, nothing. I was super clean. I didn't need any other chaos. And his wife she was a real work, 3-time widow. She was just mentally corrupted a little bit herself. I came
Jeez.
in with just this wild child, and she was like, "Oh, I'll do whatever for Tommy," and so I was there. And then she told him, she was like, "I was washing laundry and I found some marijuana seeds in Joe's laundry or something." And of course she didn't. And you know, but my dad was like, "Look, you got to grow up." And he didn't know my past. He didn't know what I had been through. He was like, "You need to grow up. You need to learn." So he kicked me out, and it was awful. I mean, because I lived with him a year, and then all of a sudden I was on the street. So I was out, and in Atlanta, I couldn't go back to my hometown. There was nothing there, and I didn't have anybody. And I had
Yeah.
closed up mentally and emotionally. The heart wasn't there anymore. Well,
That,
what ended up happening is I was in Atlanta with a lot of opportunity. Well, there's a lot of opportunity in Atlanta for shitheads. And it's not that I was a shithead, but I needed to eat and stuff like that. And I had some friends that were selling LSD, and they were bringing it in
cycle
from
through.
these biker gang in California, and they were making a ton of money, and I needed money, and I was like, I want to be a part of,
Sure.
let me get involved with that.
Hunger, money.
Yeah, so I started selling a bunch of LSD to like Georgia Tech and a bunch of different places, and then I got arrested. About a year and a half into that, and got arrested. And I was driving an ice cream truck. I had to flip on this biker gang and stuff because they wanted to give me 15 years of prison, and I, I didn't want that. And so the survivor in me, I flipped on them, and then I did have to go do some prison time. And so in it, so in prison is where things changed for me. It was a really low spot for me. I mean, the first week I was there, this guy got his divorce papers and he hung himself with the phone right next to my bunk. So I woke up with his swollen head like right in my face. But I started using what I had just learned, which was drawing, and I write. I like
You do,
words.
yeah.
So I used my words in my writing, and I started drawing like birthday cards for their kids, or I'd write their girlfriends' love letters for them. And so I'd write their love letters, and then they'd have to, because a lot of them were illiterate. And so I basically I got off easy. I mean, I got a first offender act, and do some little bit of time, and then 5 years of intensive probation, which they cut down to 2.5. That whole experience of having everything stripped and having body butt searches every time you go into a place, it just changes. You're like, I don't want anything to do with that. And I could be there in my mind, walking the streets, no problem. I mean, I could be in a hell of, you know, emotional prison. And so I made a conscious effort to try to make more good decisions than bad ones.
So you got out and you
Yeah,
went where?
I got out and I went down. I followed my girlfriend, who's now my wife. I followed her down to
Your
Athens.
next door neighbor, and
Yeah, she
and
went down to
what is
Athens to UGA,
what is she doing while is she still close?
hiding me from her parents. And then they didn't like me because I was wild, and then they forbid her to see me. And about my wife is, yeah, she caught me at the crossroads. I mean, when I moved up to Atlanta, that was my crossroads. And I met her the summer before high school, mowing grass. She'd come by, and I'd see her looking, and she didn't think I saw her looking, but she'd see her looking. Then she came and introduced herself to me one day, and we just became good friends. But I loved her,
Right.
and then I've always loved her. And so yeah, and she's just rode with me, And so I've had this like person that I want to be proud of me. Now I got two more with my daughters, and like my father-in-law, they called, while we were driving over here. They accepted me. I dated her for 10 years, and then I went to him secretly and said, "Hey, I want to marry her," And it's taken me 10 years to get my life straight enough where I think I'm good enough for her. And so I was in Athens. I lived near the apartment complex had this giant bamboo forest. I remember going into one of the head shops, and goes back to my seeing voids. I'm good at seeing voids that need to be filled, and I saw voids, and so I was like, start making bongs, because I can't buy this $300 bong, but I could certainly make one and sell it to them for 150. And so I started making them out of bamboo. Like I'd find all the dwarf bamboo that couldn't get any light, that had to fight its way out, so they're all like curved. Started selling that stuff, and then I was doing the painting, and then I started drawing and started selling the drawing to tattoo shops. Then I got a couple of opportunities. Like I had a friend opened a skateboard shop and was like, hey, you used to build speaker boxes really good, and you built some skate ramps. You think you could build me some shelves for the shop? And so I borrowed a couple of tools and I built them. But I built them some beautiful ones, and I hadn't really built anything like that really before. It was an outlet, and so I kind of went for it, and I just made something really kick-ass. And then some bar owner walked by and was like, man, can you build a bar back for me? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And I started to make money. I started to make money and be able to sustain myself in a legal fashion. I kind of put it out there to my wife's parents when I was asking her for a hand in marriage. And that at that point, I didn't live in Atlanta. I lived in Athens. My wife lived in Atlanta at the time. She had moved back from college. She was helping her parents. And I was down in Athens still just building stuff and out in the woods doing art and things. And I kind of laid out, they needed a plan, and I kind of just winged a game plan. And I didn't have a college degree. I don't have any college at all. And I said, well, listen, I'm going to come up here, and I'm probably going to become a contractor, a commercial contractor, start doing high-end whatever, and but I laid out a game plan. And then when they were like, yeah, and I married her, and then I started getting recognition for it, like people started to notice that I was a little bit better than everybody else at what I was doing.
Right.
And then everything is a discipline. I just needed to continue doing these things, because for me, I needed to continue moving and kind of barfing out this stuff.
Right.
And but I kept doing it in the same things, and so I kept building up this skill sets that I gave time to them. Yeah, and that's when the drawing, the painting, the sculpting, the writing, furniture, all the things that I do, that I'm doing, they all got a little bit of love, like all the time. I went into furniture just because the economy tanked, and so I was like, this is fucked. And so I was like, I'd never been in America's Mart or any of that stuff. There was this opportunity. If you win like best of show in high design, then it's free, and it's like $15,000 to show in best of show, like build a trade booth and do all this stuff. And so I was like, well, that's the only way I'm going to stay in business is to. So I created a whole line, got in, built the booth, and then I won best of show out of like 1,000 people showing there.
Shit is unreal.
Yeah, and so I won, and so that's the only reason. If I hadn't won, I would have just been done. That's where that came from. That furniture, I got into the furniture world that way, and that was just a. But my story was that once I got kind of going into the furniture world, and I was like, oh, I'm actually really good, and people really love this stuff I'm making. My situation is morphed a little bit. I had a factory in downtown Atlanta, and I had a bunch of guys, and we made a bunch of furniture. And so I was a furniture maker. Then I won an award. I don't remember the restaurant or the place, called Cipriani's or something in New York or some famous place there. And I won this big award for it's a Rising Star Award for some big thing. I can't even think of what it is right a second, but yeah, a bunch of people. I was up against Tommy Hilfiger's daughter, and like there were some big people there, and
you heard it.
And but I won it. I know. Yeah, so I won this award in New York. It was awesome. The furniture business was 2 years old. I'd launched it 2 years, and this freaking company came to me, corporate company. Oh, they screwed me. They were just awful. Bad corporation. There's good corporations and there are bad ones. They were a bad one. That left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, that was a few years ago, and they took a lot from me. I mean, a lot of money, a lot of potential money, a lot of owed money, I mean, they left me screwed. But luckily, I had a reputation. And then some people came to me that I knew that used to buy from me. A wonderful couple. Mike and Mike, these two guys, two lovers, and they design hotels, and they were like, we're doing this hotel in Lauderdale, and we need your brutal, like, we need Joe. And I was like, okay, no problem.
That's awesome.
We made that project happen, and at 220 room hotel, we did all the rooms, everything. That's been the last 3 years. So I've got kind of an equity share in his shop now. So it's kind of our shop. And so now we're doing restaurants.